It was a quiet Tuesday evening in Phoenix, Arizona, just after 8 p.m. when a child's scream pierced through the night. Inside a modest apartment on Maple Street, what started as another heated argument between lovers would end with one of them bleeding out on the kitchen floor and the other frantically scrubbing away the evidence. This is Once Upon a Time, where beneath the surface of every lie lies the truth. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into a case that shocked the Phoenix community in 2004. A case where passion, jealousy, and years of toxic love culminated in an act so violent it would leave two children without a father and a community asking one haunting question: how many red flags does it take before love becomes lethal? Before we begin, I want to remind you that this story deals with domestic violence and may be disturbing to some viewers. But it's these difficult stories that often teach us the most important lessons about recognizing dangerous patterns before it's too late. If you're new to our channel, welcome to Once Upon a Time, where we explore the darkest corners of human nature to understand how ordinary people can do extraordinary evil. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because we dive into cases like this every week. Now, let me ask you something before we start. Have you ever been in a relationship where the fights were so intense, so explosive, that you wondered if someone might actually get hurt? Drop your thoughts in the comments. But first, let me tell you about Olivia Sharp and Caleb Warner, and how their love story became a nightmare that would haunt Phoenix forever. Olivia Sharp was born in 1982 in Phoenix, Arizona, but her childhood was anything but the American dream. From the age of 5, Olivia's world was defined by chaos, violence, and the kind of trauma that leaves invisible scars on a child's soul. Her father was an alcoholic whose rage knew no bounds. Night after night, young Olivia would hide in her bedroom, covering her ears as her father's fists found their mark on her mother's body. The sounds of breaking dishes, screaming, and her mother's tears became the soundtrack of her childhood. When Olivia turned 8, her parents divorced, but the nightmare wasn't over. Her mother, desperate for companionship, brought home a new boyfriend who moved in almost immediately. Instead of the stability Olivia desperately needed, the cycle of abuse continued, only this time she became the target. At just 10 years old, Olivia was removed from her home and placed into foster care. But here's the thing about trauma: it doesn't just disappear when you change your address. The damage was already done. Olivia carried that rage, that need for control, that fear of abandonment with her wherever she went. In school, she was explosive. Teachers described her as a child who could go from calm to violent in seconds. She demanded control in every situation, and when she didn't get it, well, let's just say Olivia Sharp learned early that sometimes violence was the only language people understood. By 13, she was bouncing between foster homes, unable to find stability anywhere. That's when the drinking started. Then came the drugs, cocaine, pills, anything to quiet the storm raging inside her mind. At 15, she attempted suicide twice. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. At 16, Olivia met her first boyfriend. For 7 months, she experienced something she'd never felt before, what she thought was love. But when that relationship ended, something inside her snapped. She spiraled harder than ever before, and her next relationship would set a dangerous pattern that would follow her for the rest of her life. Before we continue, let me ask you this: do you think childhood trauma excuses adult behavior? Can a person's past justify their future actions? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Fast forward to 2001. Olivia, now 19 and aged out of the foster system, was living in a small apartment in downtown Phoenix. That's when she reconnected with someone from her past, Caleb Warner, a quiet, gentle soul who was just 17 years old. Caleb was everything Olivia wasn't. Where she was explosive, he was calm. Where she demanded control, he preferred peace. He worked full-time as a construction worker, despite his young age, trying to build something stable for himself. Their relationship moved fast, too fast, some would say. Within a year, they welcomed their first child. 2 years later, a second child followed. By 2004, 22-year-old Olivia was a mother of 2, while 20-year-old Caleb was working double shifts to support their small family. But money was tight, and Olivia grew restless staying home with the kids. That's when she discovered something that would change everything: online adult entertainment. Under the username Phoenix_Fire, Olivia launched an adult webcam business from their apartment. The money was good, really good. In her first year, she earned over $60,000. But more than the money, it was the attention that Olivia craved. The validation from strangers online filled a void that had been carved out by years of abandonment and abuse. But success came with a price. The constant attention from other men online began to poison her relationship with Caleb. She became increasingly paranoid, convinced that if these men online found her attractive, then Caleb must be looking elsewhere too. The jealousy was consuming her. Friends and family began to notice disturbing changes in their relationship. Olivia had become controlling, obsessively so. She demanded that Caleb text her every hour when he was at work. If he was even 5 minutes late coming home, she would explode into violent rages. And when I say violent, I mean violent. In 2003, during one particularly heated argument, Olivia grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed Caleb in the thigh. When he went to the emergency room, he told doctors it was an accident. That should have been the first red flag, but it wouldn't be the last. The question is, why didn't he leave? By early 2004, the relationship between Olivia Sharp and Caleb Warner had become a powder keg, waiting to explode. What they had wasn't love anymore, it was addiction. They were addicted to the drama, the intensity, the cycle of fighting and making up. Both were unfaithful. Both knew about the other's affairs. And both reacted with the kind of jealous rage that would make any rational person run for the hills. But Caleb wasn't rational anymore. He was trapped. Olivia's demands became increasingly extreme. She wanted constant proof of his love, gifts, flowers, elaborate apologies after every fight. And if he didn't comply? Well, let's just say the neighbors were getting used to hearing screaming from apartment 4B. The breaking point came in February 2004 when Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. But here's the twist. She wasn't sure if Caleb was the father. You see, during one of their breakups, she had been seeing someone else. And Caleb, he had been seeing someone else too, and that someone else was also pregnant. For a brief moment, Caleb was potentially expecting children with 2 different women. The betrayal sent Olivia into a spiral that friends describe as terrifying. She began making threats, not just against Caleb, but against the other woman, against Caleb's family, against anyone she perceived as a threat to her control over him. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, ironically, Olivia made a decision that would haunt her forever. She terminated her pregnancy. Caleb supported her choice, but the emotional weight of that decision added another layer of trauma to an already volatile situation. Then, on February 20th, during another explosive argument, Olivia stabbed Caleb again, this time in the arm. Once again, he told hospital staff it was an accident. Once again, he protected the woman who was slowly destroying him. But why? Why did he stay? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Those close to Caleb said he was terrified, not just of Olivia's violence, but of her threats. She had promised to hurt herself if he left. She had threatened to hurt his family. She had even threatened to make sure he never saw his children again. Fear and love had become so intertwined that Caleb couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. I want to hear from you. Have you ever known someone in a toxic relationship like this? What would you have done in Caleb's situation? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might help someone else recognize these dangerous patterns. March 15th, 2004 started like any other day in Phoenix. The sun was shining, the temperature was perfect, and Caleb Warner had no idea he was living his last day on Earth. But let's rewind to March 10th, 5 days earlier. That's when Caleb finally found the courage to do what everyone had been begging him to do for months. He told Olivia he was leaving for good. They met at Steele Indian School Park, with a friend present as a witness. Caleb, his voice shaking but determined, told Olivia that their relationship was over. He couldn't take the violence anymore. He couldn't live in fear anymore. He was done. For once, Olivia didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She didn't threaten anyone. She just sat there eerily calm and said, okay. But anyone who knew Olivia Sharp knew that her calm moments were the most dangerous ones.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
Over the next 5 days, Olivia's behavior became increasingly erratic. She was making strange internet searches, how to tie a noose, information about stab wounds, even researching whether someone could literally die of a broken heart. On March 15th, they had arranged to meet at Murphy's Tavern on Central Avenue. It was supposed to be a civil discussion about custody arrangements for their 2 children. Olivia brought the kids along, ages 4 and 2, perhaps thinking their presence would keep things peaceful. They had agreed to meet at 5 p.m. But 5 o'clock came and went, and Caleb was nowhere to be seen. By 5:30, Olivia was furious. She had been drinking a lot. She had also taken pills, a dangerous combination that amplified every emotion coursing through her body. When Caleb finally arrived at 7 p.m., he walked into a trap. Olivia was convinced he had been with another woman. She had worked herself into a rage that was beyond reason, beyond logic, beyond any hope of peaceful resolution. Caleb tried to escape to the men's room with a friend, desperate for a moment to breathe, to think, to figure out how to handle the situation. But when they emerged, Olivia was waiting. What happened next, dozens of witnesses saw. Olivia launched herself at Caleb, clawing at his face, screaming accusations. When Caleb's friend tried to intervene, she spat in his face. When other patrons tried to help, she threw drinks at them. The scene was chaos. Glasses were shattered. Chairs were overturned. And through it all, two small children watched their mother destroy their father in front of a room full of strangers. By 8 p.m., they were asked to leave the tavern. A friend offered them a ride home, a decision that person would regret for the rest of their life. In the car, Caleb made a comment that would haunt everyone who heard it. Looking out the window at the Phoenix skyline, he whispered, "I'm already dead." He had no idea how prophetic those words would be. As soon as they walked through the front door of their apartment on Maple Street, the argument resumed with a vengeance. Olivia was screaming about the events at the tavern, blaming Caleb for not defending her, for embarrassing her in public, for everything that had gone wrong in her life. The neighbors, Tyler Bennett and his wife Sarah, heard the shouting through the thin walls. They had heard it before many times, but something about this fight felt different. More desperate, more dangerous. At some point during the argument, Olivia walked into the kitchen and returned with a knife. It wasn't the first time she had threatened Caleb with a blade, but as he would soon learn, it would be the last. Without warning, without hesitation, Olivia drove the knife directly into Caleb's chest. The apartment fell silent. Upstairs, awakened by the sudden quiet after so much noise, their 4-year-old son crept out of his bedroom and looked down the staircase. What he saw would require years of therapy to process. His father was on the kitchen floor, bleeding. His mother was standing over him, holding a knife, looking shocked at what she had done. But here's what makes this case particularly chilling. Instead of calling 911, instead of trying to save the man she claimed to love, Olivia's first instinct was to cover up her crime. She threw Caleb's blood-stained shirt into the washing machine. She grabbed bleach and began scrubbing the kitchen floor. She was trying to erase the evidence of her crime, while Caleb was still clinging to life. It was Tyler Bennett, their neighbor, who heard the commotion and came to investigate. He found Olivia in hysterics, claiming that Caleb had hurt himself. But Tyler was a paramedic, and he knew a stab wound when he saw one. He immediately began CPR, while his wife called 911. For 26 minutes, Tyler fought to keep Caleb alive, pressing on his chest, breathing air into his lungs, refusing to give up. At 8:47 p.m., paramedics arrived and rushed Caleb to St. Joseph's Hospital. Despite hours of emergency surgery, doctors were unable to save him. The knife had pierced his heart. Caleb Warner, just 20 years old, was pronounced dead at 11:23 p.m. In the hours following Caleb's death, Olivia Sharp's story kept changing. First, she claimed Caleb had stabbed himself. Then, she said he had wrestled the knife away from her. Later, she insisted that Caleb had grabbed her hand while she was holding the knife and forced it into himself. But investigators had something Olivia didn't account for: an eyewitness. Her 4-year-old son, despite his young age, was able to give a clear statement to specially trained child psychologists. "Mommy stabbed Daddy," he said with the heartbreaking honesty that only children possess. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage from the tavern showed Olivia's violent behavior. Text messages revealed her threats and obsessive behavior. Internet search history showed her researching methods of violence in the days leading up to the murder. On March 16, 2004, less than 24 hours after Caleb's death, Olivia Sharp was charged with first-degree murder. During her trial in October 2004, prosecutors painted a picture of a woman whose jealousy and need for control had escalated into deadly violence. Defense attorneys argued that Olivia suffered from borderline personality disorder, a mental health condition rooted in her traumatic childhood. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. Guilty of first-degree murder, Olivia Sharp was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. She would be eligible for release in 2029, but many who knew and loved Caleb hope that day never comes. But what about the children? Caleb's mother was granted custody of both children, who were 4 and 2 at the time of their father's murder. They're adults now, trying to build lives from the ashes of a tragedy they witnessed but were too young to understand. The 4-year-old who testified against his own mother? He's now a college graduate, studying to become a social worker. He says he wants to help other children who witness domestic violence to be the voice he wished he had when he was 4 years old. Today, Olivia Sharp remains incarcerated at the Arizona State Prison Complex in Perryville. Reports suggest she has been in and out of relationships with other inmates, a pattern that seems to support what psychologists said about her need for control and attention. Caleb's family established the Caleb Warner Foundation in 2005, dedicated to helping young men recognize the signs of domestic violence and providing resources for those trapped in abusive relationships. Because while we often think of domestic violence as something that happens to women, Caleb's story reminds us that men can be victims too. So, what can we learn from this tragedy? First, that love shouldn't hurt, literally. If your partner has ever raised a hand to you, if they control your every move, if they threaten to hurt themselves or others if you leave, that's not love. That's abuse. Second, that mental health issues don't excuse violence. Olivia's traumatic childhood was real. Her borderline personality disorder was real, but so was her choice to pick up that knife. And finally, that sometimes the most dangerous moment in an abusive relationship is when the victim tries to leave. If you know someone in this situation, help them make a safety plan. Don't just tell them to leave, help them leave safely. What do you think? Could this tragedy have been prevented? What would you have done if you were Caleb's friend or family member? Share your thoughts below, and if this story resonated with you, please share it. You never know who might need to hear it. Thank you for watching Once Upon a Time, where beneath the surface of every lie lies the truth. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and remember, until next time, stay safe and stay curious.